Okay, yeah, so I don't know what the deal is about the. I might have to do a little bit of setting. I'm going to give this a go right here. Yeah, I'd mentioned, it's kind of like predominantly I'm using YouTube. And obviously there's something about the StarGate program, and I'd mentioned it before about making, music video and the standards that I chose as a drummer, really even a singer. I haven't really made any video, so in as much as to where I'm predominantly more so on my drums. Um, and that way. But anyway, yeah. So like all the drummers that I predominantly chose, throughout quite some, about 30 years, 35 years worth of drums and more than 3,000 songs. The thing with it is that really just using YouTube.com as a music video portfolio. Ultimately just putting the versatility and the range of ability and yeah, just to do that for a portfolio and it's kind of like working on that and then considerable amount. So taking place now. I'm in the tent right now, and I don't know if it's like the standard deal about YouTube or not. But the thing with this is that it seemed to me ultimately that ultimately the entire thing about Pearland has been ultimately some idea, like a phenomenally huge secret of neighborhoods, a PG-13 or whatever that means with like a presidential governor parental guidance, and it seemed to be the thing about the neighborhood and the way of like the entire situation of a birth here. I mean, me being born 1964 seems to be, I don't know if I'd necessarily say anything other than knowing alphanumerically that 64 is an American and HTTP colon and PTIS and as far as like COVID 19 or the cumulative rollover beyond the new millennium being the year 2000, this being the year 2024. Um, and the significance seemed to be that think about the military time, this 24-hour thing as compared to the alphanumerics of like a the SE, the Apple iPhone SE, the SE being 24, the RF, the redundant frequency, HOA, Homeowners Association, GMAC of the General Motors Acceptance Corporation, and the thing about promissory notes, and the IEEE being 24. The thing with this is that it ultimately gets to uh, whether or not if the 24 is going to be the ideal um, as a quarter. If it's going to be like the idea of a quadrant and a perfect 10-10 vision, ultimately, it seemed to be the thing about power squared and E equal MC squared and exponential quotients of powers of multiplication. And it seemed to be the thing about, beyond itemization going through a circuit. Um, Going through a circuit seemed to be the thing about the itemization and the alphanumerics of 141 and expenditure and the human capital factor of what itemization means going through a circuit. And ultimately, somewhere in my mind seemed to be, some information that's been provided as something involving the summit meetings in Geneva, and certain factors of, the being venue. And, right now, to skip, all the, I really don't even want to call it history, but the chronological order of the way I was thinking about alphanumerically and linguistically, as far like Geneva, Switzerland, or the summit meetings, reflecting some idea of the location, like the summit and ultimately, the compact center of the rockets, and now Lakewood Church, in the same immediate vicinity of, the Israeli embassy. And the thing about that specific location in, Highway 59 in the Wesleyan area, and Greenway Plaza that way. Greenway Plaza being, known for, the Greenway. And, think about the building of the Israeli embassy, and how true it is to this day. It's been a lot of years since I've been anywhere near it. But I'm assuming that Greenway Plaza is still like Greenway. And think about the pastel green identified like, during the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Okay, this year, 2024. And the thing about, during Richard Nixon, before, during, and after Richard Nixon, of the 1976 200-year celebration of America and the bicentennial thing, being the 200-year thing, and the quarter itself being the front side of the Statue of Liberty, and the back side, the thing about the 13 stars and the bicentennial drum and the snare drum. And, yeah, so that's, the thing about, it seemed to be the thing about a drummer being like 92 in a pentagon, reserve, reverse, or what that is to intelligence and opposite or telepathic phase. Or the difference between, what would be maybe the thought of maybe once again, the ISS, International Space Station, International Superstar, and Supplemental Security. And I got real, briefly on the PPI of the Mississippi Misappropriation Allocation of the Mississippi, and the PPI and the PPO, and the thing about, a PPO and an HMO, and the HMO being like 8 and 13 being like the 21st letter of the U, and the UO, and the PPO and the PPI in Mississippi being like a hypothetical metaphor, or thought of like whether it's a 15 or 16 digit of a checking account as a thought of what is identified now as not an electronic wallet, being a debit card of a checking account involved with a bank. Yet between Wells Fargo and Regions 1, it presents the Now card as everything about like clear access banking of Wells Fargo, predominantly, ultimately, signing the fact of brochures and the availability of internet information as far as that it's not a checking account. It presents itself as a 15-digit number. And the thing about, like American Express and the Bluebird card, and the difference between credit and deduction, based upon analytical principle, even the EBT being like electronic benefit transfer, and the thing about the Lone Star card and the SNAP food benefits. So I mean, it seemed to be like ultimately it's getting to the principles of a combination of sets of three, like litigation de facto and writ habeas corpus, and that way. So I mean, like the PPI of the Mississippi and the misappropriation application of the Mississippi, like a motor around a kingfisher at the English Parliament, and the Henry VIII thing about 36 being the number 8 and a TH being 36, and all the stuff about Henry VIII, representative of predominantly a turkey leg, and the thing about Thanksgiving in a way, like even the Cocos acceptance speech at Plymouth Rock, and what the Mayflower is as compared to Christopher Columbus at 1492 represented like some idea like the beginning like of the United States, but in reality the 200-year celebration of America seems to originate in combination with some idea in my mind as an easement between even like Abraham Lincoln setting the slaves free. I mean, it's almost like a celebration of like the difference between constitutional law and state statutes annotated, as compared to thing about United States codes annotated, and the New Testament being the red factor, and it's kind of like referring to the Permian Basin of like Fort Stockton, and think about one James Bond movie that's like not about the bonds seems to be the big deal about the misappropriation allocation of the Mississippi, and the ISS and SSI being a real quick thing about International Superstar, International Space Station, or Supplemental Security, and the PPI and the PPO being like like programming a variable, a principle of the R being visible and pronounced. The same principle of the 16-digit, the P being pronounced and being visible and pronounced, and visible and silent. Representative, thing of the 15-digit, prepaid card as compared to the 16-digit a checking account presenting the option like the history of a mailbox. Now, the thing about the history of a mailbox is like the rural route, predominantly, ultimately, the Wyatt Earp thing, like of exclusionary rules, the exclusionary rule provision, like the rural route and the line, and ultimately it seemed to be, the thing about, sovereign immunities, governmental amnesties, and executive powers, and, the idea of what switching and routing is, a network with, what a checking account obviously has is a routing number. And a rural route, the thing with this is that a history of a mailbox. There seemed to be the thing about the PPI and the PPO and the Iowa caucus, and the PPO and the HMO representative like of the Iowa, and the PPI and the PPO being hypothetical metaphor of the P's, and the thing about the IO, and yet the PPO and the HMO presents the factor of like H&M being like 8 and 13 being 21, the letter U and the UO, and the IO and the UO, And, the hypothetical metaphor of the P is a representative, of being invisible, and sequencing characterization in sets of four in that way of like programming, like binary numbers, yet at the same time, being visible and silent that way is like the 0 and 1 of binary numbers. I mean, exactly in that way. And binary numbers is 0 and 1. And what the deal is now seems to be the thing about the preliminary purchase of product registration of birth certificate being some idea of the carbon footprint, and that fact that the PPO and the PPI and the hypothetical metaphor of a 16-digit, checking account with a history of a mailbox being some idea of like a switching and routing as a rural route, or the exclusionary rule provision seem to be the big deal about rural routes and Wyatt Earp. And the thing about Hopsing and Pepe between, and just both Hopsing and Pepe with John Wayne and Wyatt Earp and the chef thing about the walk. And, it's pronounced, in Panning for Gold, being baptized during the gold rush and on the stagecoach and all that stuff about Wells Fargo. I mean, in that way, and it's still the Hopsing and Pepe thing between, Wyatt Earp and John Wayne. And the thing about a rural route with Wyatt Earp predominantly before, the Technicolor and the pastel, yet Earp being ERP and excluding their rule provision of sovereign immunities, governmental amnesties, and executive powers was just a deal about rural route in the history of a mailbox. And the thing about with the IRA, I mean, it's just a box, checking a box. And normally anyone with itemizing anything on a Schedule A or B, normally requirements involving participation claiming any itemization in a way of tax forms require normally, within description of the source of what is considered normally earned, yet, the IRA presents itself almost like a certificate of deposit years later, yet at the same time it's a prepaid tax and presents itself almost like, supplemental security as non-taxable income. I mean, that way. And, think about the EBT and the electronic benefits transfer between, the thought of SNAP food benefits of the Lone Star car being, the thing about, getting food that doesn't require even going to the bank, or the thought of a credit, a tax credit or a tax deduction representative, of the thing about, not even really in my life taught as American Express being the idea of a prepaid card, not a checking account, and the Bluebird thing, and what that is in circuit going through will seem to be, the itemization ultimately, on the expenditure side of aggregates of monetary domestic gross national product. It seemed to be the thing about human capital that way that has ultimately, during the StarGate program, I mean, the first 4 years, 3 months, okay, on a 10, ultimately went, really beyond 15 years. I hadn't thought about the 16th year, but, there was a 16-month period of having to go to the hospital, and once a month, and it wasn't anything other than, a spontaneous, not even planned or anything about having a need to call 911. And it was the 15th month that I did not have to go. It's the one and only month of the 16. And what I'm referring to as 16-year period of some proper English numerical composition of what would be, the hypothetical metaphor, the PPI as misappropriation allocation to Mississippi. And the ISS and the SSI thing about, International Space Station and supplemental security. The thing it is about making a grade beyond internet protocol of a local area network seems to be, my thing about, what I'm kind of thinking about now, involving, the Iowa caucus. And if the Iowa caucus is really the thought of a mode around the kinsmanship, English Parliament, as a PPI and a PPO, and the IO thing about a hypothetical metaphor, whether it's a hypothetical metaphor only based upon the P being visible and pronounced, or the P being visible and silent, and the thing about the R between the county and the country that way, applied to the R, instead of it not being an option, and it seemed to be the thing about the PR. In any case, so the footprint seemed to be the thing about, the carbon footprint and the hypothetical metaphor. Being on the front lines of the beach, right, ultimately in my mind, it seemed to be getting to the StarGate program, because, going to the StarGate program, there's stars in, uniform, everyone in color code in that way in any case. The thing with this is that, I know that, but I still wasn't even thinking in any kind of way of a StarGate program. And it wasn't really until really after, like the 15-year originally started out as 10, and 15, and even a 16 beyond, thing about 16 being the whole idea of like a method, of identifying, factors involved with like checking account or, not checking account or, where really the tax credit is, that is given the impression of like on the tax form as just checking a box on the IRA, yet, actually getting something other than, the thought of like already knowing because of like, um, a tax credit being more than, on what's on itemized as any kind of itemization really at all on any of the 1040. And the thing with this is that, there's Schedule A and Schedule B, and the EZ, and see the difference between, what seems to be now like the Diners Club, symbolic representation of like the circle with the vertical line in it, and, the thing about vertical reading top to bottom being Japanese, and the 22 letters of Japanese presenting, the thing about, ultimately getting to quantum, the absolute values, and a symbolic representation between, the backside of the US $1 bill between C and a PTIS, and the alphanumerics like McDonald's Golden Arches and the Hot Cafe coffee cup, and the three most simplest computations of addition, three simple methods of addition and computation equating to 58, identifying, how to calculate, the automatic minimum requirements, symbolic representation between the C and PTIs being 58, ultimately getting to the idea of like programming of like Texas Instruments. And it seems to be a thing about a calculus and a calculator that presents the EE, and 58 becoming 59 as a horizontal, or 39 thing about being flat, or the difference between like a landscape and a portfolio of a 90-degree right angle, and like a new development, and the thing about the construction ultimately, OSHA and the ocean between, the thing about the big span of the river, and like the grand opening thing about whether if the blue ribbon is really, the idea of like a yeah, the Garden of Eden ribeye, legislative drumstick, the cutting of the blue ribbon, uh, yeah, like a ribeye drumstick, class curve thing about it. Well, anyway, it's kind of like, going through the StarGate program and realizing certain factors. Ultimately, memory came, the big deal about, and when I really remembered, and when it was like, after the entire situation of really a 16-year period, really, but ultimately it's like a Microsoft screensaver presenting sequencing of screensavers, and a period of maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years. Why wouldn't it be 6 years at this point right now? Anyway, I like Microsoft presenting, sequencing of like multiple, screensavers, but it was the European's most wealthiest museum. I mean, that's when I knew, the first time that memory had been the issue. And I don't like using that word, amnesia. But I mean, if it's like a temporary duration, with the eternal treasure, I'm thinking that really, that an eternal treasure being involved with some of the oldest, experiences like military. I'm assuming that, all that stuff about television programming would, be an automatic assumption, maybe memory, being rejuvenated based upon, television and entertainment being involved that way to maybe suggest is there any thought about like what's being looked at, or the difference between national deficit of over cold scrap of the here and there, presenting the idea of the P being visible and silent, and the P being visible and like pronounced. And the thing about it is that European's most wealthiest museum, I didn't think of it as, but my thought is that actually that's why I remember, going through the StarGate program, the incoherence thing about, driver's education in high school. And that one cartoon with the plus signs being, representative of the eyes, and what is taught is alcohol and barbiturates. But really going through the StarGate program, it seemed to be a thing about, air quality and being asleep and, something like that happening. And it seemed to be like a 6-month to 9-month period. I loved it, like different places around the world, but I knew that it had to have been, that when I really realized it, it was like after, all that intense stuff, like of 1994, 95, 1996, and even really 1997. But it seemed to be like, like I made a score on an ASVAB, um, like an Army, of 97%. Okay, and nothing ever, anything, I think it was 1984. Okay, and the thing about 1984, okay, my birth year seemed to be, it seemed to be, so calculated in English, it's unreal. Um, for like 1964 being like a 83 or winter, or 1965 being like 84, and the embassy in the state, and also empowered with by paralegal, and certain factors about that invention. But the thing is that ultimately it got to like the light year thing of invisible programming and LightScribe of LightScribe isometrics and the biometric thing, and invisible programming beyond biometrics, and a bunch of white stuff. YouTube presents the YT being pronounced like white. The white area network and the white world of sports. It's like the rectangle being vertical, representative of the thing about Thousand Island, even Grover Cleveland's salad dressing, huh, making a great beyond, and somewhere between the thing about the salad, Thousand Islands, a little bit of humor there. But the thing is that ultimately it seemed to be the thing about the 1965 and something in my mind of LASIK laser corrective eye surgery. And how true it is, I'm just looking at a coupon. And the thing of it is that that LASIK laser corrective eye surgery, what you're looking at now on me and behind me is like, laser 3D animation and laser technology for like music video for, special effects of lighting, okay? And there's lasers and there's lasers, okay? But the thing of it is that, that being the thing about, me being a drummer, okay? And the thought of like being persuaded by a persuasive technique of thinking. I was like doing that anyway, okay? Ultimately, I'm a drummer, okay? And the thing of it is that finally, the lighting and all that, it's like having quite a bit of equipment for like a audio production, music video, recording studio right here. And this tent one in here. But the thing of it is that something about, the Pearl Vision VSX in the Strata Red was like some idea of some retroactive future. It seemed to be like also in combination, like an axis of retro, what retroactive is of, the history, the past, present, and future of proper English numerical composition, and some videos that are showing like now on YouTube of predominantly like Egypt and some idea of like some spaceships. And actually, wondering, if that's actually, on this planet, for real, but really, some stuff that was on there was like the thing about, driver's education and the incoherence of a cartoon representing the eyes as a plus sign. And it seemed to be the big deal, like an unidentified flying high school yearbook, or when a publisher does not put the name of the publisher, the street address, the city, state, zip code, phone number, email, any information identifying it really, other than, maybe the front cover. If at all lucky. Normally it's just like the theming thing about, a high school. But the thing it is like, apparently it was like Gusher. The thing about Gusher, okay? And, the football team, the Oilers, okay, as compared to the Houston Oilers at the time. In any case, yeah, so like, also about Pearland and oil being, 36 and Chase Inc. and what was not even available, to a considerable amount, and seemed to be the big deal about Papermate pen in a blue ink, predominantly, what I used anyway. They had the vertical, like, 2 hearts on it between Papermate and the 2, hearts having some idea of some kind of significance. Other thing about, the product registration of a birth certificate, or the graffiti and confetti, and some idea of like the absentee voting as compared to, being amphibious, or, the front lines of the beach run, the carbon footprint, what that is to a birth certificate, as compared to biometrics, from, feet to the fingertip, of like biometrics and LightScribe, and visible programming, and some like isometric like sky biometrics of Braille in the elevator. In any case, so it seems to be the thing about the Permian Basin identifying some factor of like Mobile One. Okay, it's like viscosity. It's like the thing with like Mobile One in oil being the thing about graphite. The thing about a birth certificate, okay, and even a copier technician in the drum and the toner, an atonement. It's like a covenant with God, okay, an atonement. And the thing about atonement and the toner, like a copier, I mean, it presents the toner, the similarities of like graphite. Yet graphite presents the metal particles that are not necessarily, as far as I know, identified as graphite. Yet it's particles that are attracted by a magnetic pull of an electronic grid. And when the light is like during the copier process using toner, the light, dissipates an electronic charge on the surface of a rotating drum. And the particles seem to be the thing about graphite being small particles of light metallic. Some idea of like the pewter between like a pastel and technicolor, and the grayscale likewise. In addition, with pewter being identified as a category like pastel and technicolor involving metallic paint as a pewter, or the pewter being a computer or .com computer, or issuing equator, equator-tator, yeah, a pewter, yeah. In any case, so like it seemed to be a thing about some of the music videos showing Egypt like right now and a bunch of gold and some idea of like being in different locations of the incoherence and it's almost like the mind's eye thing about Ford is written of a military burial deterrent, and it's kind of like going through certain factors of it. It's kind of like is the incoherence or a combination of like everything yeah, for real. In the mind's eye, I mean, without a doubt, is the idea of the front lines of the beachfront, and the 4 feet, the 2 sets of footprint, and the question, Lord, where are you when I need you most? That's when I was carrying you. And Christianity normally doesn't identify as the idea of an amphibious, a hypothetical metaphor as a military burial deterrent being carried, or the thing about the mind's eye that way. But it seemed to be something in my mind of some of the music videos that are showing now. As the Egypt, the Dark Knight and the Barrett, the thing it is that certain music videos, okay, like one of them is like Whitney Houston, The Greatest Love of All, and the thing with like Kevin Costner, and Kevin Costner being in the movie The Field of Dreams, Build and They Will Come, and it seemed to be like the Houston Musician Union thing, as Centerford and like the Minute Maid Field, and going through the circuit and the books that were there. Going through like the Nimitz class, and what minutes is like legal media and deposition and transcripts and court proceedings. Like the Nimitz class is ultimately about like 3 nuclear powered ships as well as like 3 powered nuclear submarines in military time, and presents that issue of 3, yet 6 at the same time, like a 3-point star of like the delta being identified as the big spout of the river, yet in electronics like a triangle and a pyramid and a pi r squared presenting 6-point star and a code blue like the Israeli flag. And the Nimitz class presents the aircraft carrier, predominantly the ship of 3 nuclear powered aircraft carriers and the 3 nuclear powered submarine, and the connectivity, the secrets of the temple between Europe, the Mediterranean, and the Persian Gulf. The same principle of like location and practical application, like some idea of like the huge love triangle between like Europe and like the Saudi Arabian thing about oil and the Persian Gulf, and even Nostradamus narrated by Orson Welles. It's like the big 3 thing of Nostradamus, and it seemed to be like I-10s, like the idea of like a potentiometer, and some idea of like the difference between power amplification between the stereo system and the home theater, and the thing about the outputs of 192 is the difference between electrical and electronic, and the idea of like ratio, the HTTP colon / between the ISS and the SSI thing, and the PPI and the HMO being the UO and the Euro and the IO and the Iowa caucus. The thing of it is, is that all that information seemed to be, so very much alphanumeric and linguistic and proper English numerical composition that, but anyway, some like music videos with like a bunch of gold and like futuristic uniform. Some like give the impression of like Riot or Star Wars, but the thing is that like a Yanni concert, and there's the band that sings the song Valley of the Kings in on-site location, and being able to remember any of it is like phenomenally only entertainment and television and presenting maybe to like rejuvenate. Well, let's see what I remember for the first time. I didn't even consider the StarGate program, although I knew stars were very much involved, when like it wasn't an issue of like being asleep or being some idea of like incoherence or some idea of like an air raid thing about while I was asleep. It seemed to be it had to have been at least a 6 month or 9 month period, and like at different locations, and phenomenally remembering anything about it. But that's when I really considered the StarGate program, when I realized that memory was a big deal and like a considerable amount. I mean, for not limited to a 6 month to a 9 month period of the incoherence, if not the actual military burial deterrent. And I'm almost certain that the forward is written of Immigration Customs Enforcement, or the thought of like a importing and exporting of like the triangle and plain horizons as compared to the thought of the triangle being some idea of a pyramid, as compared to the circle of the pie chart representing what would be a triangle of a pie chart, yet the circle, yet pi r squared in the way of pi r squared like using a radius added to itself twice, multiplied by the 3.1416. Okay. Anyway, so I was wanting to include that because there's like so much information. I already need to get some sleep. Okay. But anyway, I think about so much, it's like ridiculous. Automatically, it's kind of like, being fascinated and, beyond almost compelled, I wouldn't really call it obsessed. It seemed, some idea of the StarGate program. And when it actually became a StarGate program to me, it was like when I realized that the European's most wealthiest museum, Europe's most wealthiest museum became the deal of like humans, people in the museum. The thing is that the hallway on the screensaver being presented as a Microsoft, like a PowerPoint, sequencing multiple, screensavers. And, the inside of the Europe's most wealthiest museum is like a checkerboard of like granite between like white or ivory. And the thing about, marble, some like idea of like black marble, granite, as a checkerboard, and the white statues in the hallway, and realizing that I was there and didn't remember a thing, even looking at the screensavers multiple times, other than noticing that I'd seen, a series of sequencing the same, I think they were the same screensavers, and then realizing, for the first time, that's when, I really knew. And the thing about the videos they're showing now, it seemed to me that a lot of the videos showing all the gold and glitter and futuristic uniform, if not riot, thing about the uniform. And, the thing about with the word, the bar, and the accent, and the AT, the Barrett thing, and, soundscape, and the thing about the, in addition, like the AI Vision 6, and there's like a multitude of like that, as well as like artificial intelligence. It's almost like, even remembering certain factors of it, it's kind of like, it's kind of like mentioning to someone I was talking to, it's kind of like, knowing the difference of like being, incoherent, or, alive or dead, or, in a military department, in the mind's eye, thoroughly being, before it is written of a real deterrent. For real. And, the thing is, I don't like talking about like that, like period at all. But it seemed to be like, the thing about, the carbon footprint, and the method of banking, of international banking system, using some idea of like, geographic, and like a name and identity, for a StarGate program. It's kind of like, not realizing or even knowing how or what to look for or how to even define it or identify it. It's like, I've been going on really since June of 1990, a baptism. And ultimately, looking for information involving, a baptism and like a heart guide and mental telepathy, having like a mental magnetic experience of some idea of lifting a birth that, in some people's mind, a misinterpretation of the exorcism might not be maybe anything other than maybe a persuasive technique of thinking and realizing consciously as compared to subconsciously, waking up to the fact of a persuasive technique of thinking, such as subliminal message minds lie. It's almost deceptive in a way. Not necessarily that the word exorcism would represent what is portrayed, the Linda Blair, exorcism, but maybe more so along the lines of an experience of a telepathic birth. And I use that word exorcism not necessarily to compare it by a Linda Blair movie of the Exorcist, or an exorcism being anything other than, like involving, what seemed to be ultimately a baptism in a telepathic birth, a mental, magnetic, mental uplifting, some idea of like a telepathic mediation, and that symbolic representation on the backside of the US $1 bill, presenting some idea of like a spiritual mediation as a spirit of adoption factor. It's biblical scripture, but it's not really defined. Yet, it seems to be with proper English numerical composition between, the P being visible and pronounced and the P being visible and silent, and the principle of why, Galveston County cannot use the R in Galveston County equaling, the idea of alphanumerics of 213, or Los Angeles, or LA being like linguistic alphanumerics, Los Angeles, LA. And the M is in, geoprism is geoprism, 109 is 110, alphanumerics 247, like a Robert E. Rubin quarter. But anyway, it seemed to be the thing about Galveston County not being able to use the R, because, 213 being, Chevrolet Silverado or telepathic brainwaves would present the issue. Even the surface to air thing about, the mistletoe. Yeah, but the thing with this is that ultimately, the thing about it, Galveston County can't use the R that way. It wouldn't equate to, like the alphanumerics of 213, yet right here, Brazoria being Pearland, Texas, and the Z71 of, Chevrolet Silverado being 213 or telepathic brainwaves, Galveston County in the Los Angeles area code of 213. It presents that Z71 thing in Pearland, okay? And Brazoria that way with the R from Brazoria County to Brazoria Country, in the biblical term identified as the spirit of adoption, and very much a symbolic representation between the C and the PTIS on the backside of the US $1 bill, like a spiritual telepathic mediation. And the thing about Chevy Chase, okay, is 99, like the alphanumerics of like 13, and the 13 stars above the eagle, and the Washington being 130, like a telepathic eagle, and the 13 stars, and some idea of like telepathic being 99 in Chevy Chase that way, of the 13 stars, and the thing about it being above the eagle, and like even the telepathic map, alphanumerics of 30 and 30 something, or Vantage Love 30. And the thing about that 70 show, okay, it seemed to be the thing about Vantage. The difference between Advantage and Vantage, Love 30. Okay? And Secret Defacto that way. And that 70 show seemed to be the thing about Vantage that way. So it gets to the thing about almost like Route 66 at the same time. And the difference between, the thought of Vantage being 70, minus the D, and that would be like 66, but, or 65, and 66, the same way the Social Security Administration's number 12 and 13 is like L12 and M13, and the same as L64 and like M65, and the COVID ID 19 if human to roll over into the new millennium, being the thing about the operator in 64 in Zion, 1,000 years of peace in Grover, Cleveland, even the thing about the Ten Commandments. The thing with it is that in reality, it seemed to be the thing about the spirit of adoption being a Brazoria country thing, using the R that way, and the principle of like proper English numerical composition combined with alphanumerics and linguistics that way biblically to identify like a spiritual experience, identifies symbolic representation. And the thing about, Geneva, Switzerland, and Zilton's symbol, and like a drummer being symbol and symbolic, like the symbol on the backside of the US $1 bill, and going beyond like a method of banking of the US dollar, the euro dollar side of like the symbol between the C and the PTIS of like European standards of, the minimum of 240 volts, identifying the fact about European, and my thought of what is normally 177 volts of lighting as an American English How true it is about the lighting in Europe, I'm not sure, but I know it's 240 volt. And the IEE being 24, and the big O, the organization being 0 and 240, presenting, the difference between 177 minus 26, the mental telepathy minus God, or the subliminal message minus 26, the guard king, God lie, and, the dog, the RCA thing about, the mascot, or what boycott and embargo is, of a mascot, or a method of banking. It seemed to be the deal between maritime law beyond the front lines of the beachfront, identifying a .com as internet protocol of a local area network, and what a wire area network to Abraham Lincoln night vision is to the hood ornament in 90 degree of a portrait in a landscape, and some idea of a superimposium of a new development, and getting, beyond the idea of residential, that way, in a more a commercial venue of living quarters. And the thing about, symbolic representation on the backside of the U.S. $1 bill beyond the method of banking, and on the electronic side, the electronic side of a European standard being 240 volts. I know that the lighting in English in commercial venue is predominantly more so based upon really my experience is a bunch of 9-degree stuff of a commercial venue of 177 volts of lighting. That's ultimately, the 9-degree issue of neighborhoods. That is unreal. The 177, yet it presents the alphanumerics of like mental telepathy and a telepathic power or subliminal message, minus the 26 thing, equaling 151, Secret Service and Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ, and the thing about select other factors that way. But the thing is that, 240 volts, it seems to be alphanumerics. It's like, hey, there's not supposed to be a subtraction symbol, yet the algebraic test of inversion of does or does not equal presents that, the equal sign with the line through it. Yet that cartoon and driver's education at high school, during high school, is a thing about being during high school, and information of TEA approved. TEA approved. The absentee would be, like TEA approved, like Texas Educational Agency, Texas Education approved, TEA, the requirements, at a minimum of a high school curriculum, and presenting, the cartoon of driver's education with the 2+ signs. And it seemed to be the deal about, even the publisher not identifying the high school yearbook. Is that like segregation? Or is that really like Abraham Lincoln and the colonel being designated as some idea whether on par as a driver or a river of the misappropriation case in Mississippi in some mode around like a kinsmanship representing the English Parliament of a golf course and a pastel green and all that stuff about, colloquially make America great again, like, Great Britain, British Petroleum, presenting the colors of like Sprite, yet at the same time, the thing about oil and the jurisprudence of the black back on the back, and, repudiation, import and export of like a gross national product that way of like a color code of constitutional law and state statutes annotated and ratified and codified of constitutional law and human capital that way of investment terminology, ultimately, the thing going beyond of like the mayor's office and like proclamation and declarations, some idea, beyond the Vlasic stork and some idea of Van Camp's, a can of Van Camp's in an Easter basket, and all that stuff about, some idea of like a yo-yo with a leasing agreement between, Ulysses S. Grant and some idea of like a mascot of RCA, yeah. In any case, yeah, so like, so I was wanting to say that about the product registration because it seemed like right now the music videos are showing quite a bit like the Dark Knight being the Egypt thing, and they're steering. That's the thing about, it seemed to be like Europe at the same time in Egypt making the music videos in soundscape and the bear at the bar, raising a bar, and the perfect 10-10 vision beyond, like ice skating, and the infinite lines at the 90 degree of like even the figure 8, a principle of practical application, and likewise, for real, like pi r squared dividing the square into two triangles of the big mouth of the river and electronic schematic of a triangle of the delta force. It's like all there. And right now there's like music videos of like all that gold that seemed to be like inside the Kremlin of an experience like going through, what was in, like, even remember would be like only something about it being on television or YouTube. YouTube being like 109, and written. I think 40's written seemed to be the big deal about the mind's eye of a military barrier determinant, or the incoherence, beyond anything taught in education, of driver's education on high school campuses. Normally, back then, when I was going to driver's ed in high school, it's like, the idea of like barbiturates and alcohol. According to what I've experienced, the incoherence is like far beyond that. As far as like, being asleep and some idea of like what the environment is on an EPA standard, of the incoherence of just being asleep inside, some idea of the oldest governmental computer mainframe called the Whopper, and different locations going through a circuit, predominantly in 1994, 1995, 1996. Was automatically, when I saw that the World Trade Center was only on the world news at the Hughes unit in Gatesville. Now the thing about Barbara Walters and Hughes down, Howard Hughes, and like the Chevy Chase saying like how, and then Kemosabe, the Native American Indian thing of the telepathic CP, representing like a pylon on the Statue of Liberty, and some idea of like a perpendicular spiral at a 90 degree presenting like a circle with a dot on it, as far like blueprints and schematics. Yet it presents the isometrics of an area of a circle of pi r squared, going beyond the area of the flat plane surface into distinguishing whether or not if it's available in post-capillary period and national deficit, identifying what circumference and volume is of a cylindrical body. Even like Fred Flintstone's, the car song, life's the same, moving in stereo, life's just the same. And I've added, except for Fred Flintstone's shoes, the car is life's the same, moving in stereo, life's the same, except for my shoes. To me, that would have to be, about the pi r squared and Fred Flintstone. Even the copier drum of orange being like the Coast Guard's color, and the silver selenium being like a circuit and printed circuit boards. Not limited to, although a photoconductive material like a photographic memory, and what memory minus Defacto is, the 35 in NASA, or I-35, and being the state capital, human capital investment terminology, identifying some idea beyond itemization on the expenditure side, going through it, and ultimately my thought like going to being taken to the thing. The thing is being taken to. Like on gurneys, like the James Madison dolly. You've seen commercials. It's phenomenally not a joke, but it's almost like a. Is it the thing about the Houston Parade magazine, and some idea of like yeah, the thing about being on James Madison dolly, and somewhere in my mind, Def Leppard's like rock and roll clown thing, and a kiss. Something about the incoherence. It's phenomenal. Something now is like the StarGate program, and to start being involved that way. Kind of like remembering quite a bit about it would be not seeing anything in any kind of way, some idea like retroactively on television. What it seems to be like now. In addition, really, it's really been probably around maybe close to 6 or 7 years when I really realized that memory. I don't like using that word amnesia because it's like to me, it's like an intellectual duration going through the StarGate program. Really not limited to, but it seemed to be really more than that. After my mother and father had passed away, that seemed to be like when memory started becoming more and more the idea of just like like it's like a restless heart on when today's just a memory to me. I know, for real, and certain things about just that phrase of a restless heart song, and why does it have to be black or white? Why does it have to be wrong or right? It's like the Univision thing of like a black Remo black guy drumhead and the power Aquarian power dot. What caviar is beyond the front lines of the beachfront, beyond Prince of Wales, and the Aquarian power white dot being the idea of a drumhead. Yeah, I don't mean to sound like a promiscuous salmon with a cover charge or an antisocial drumhead at a tribe of Judah Jubilee, But the thing about, in my mind with Ringo Starr would almost be like the tambourine like that, and really the ring, it seemed to be the name, because my name being Wade Southern Period, alphanumeric 213, Okay, I did not know anything, I mean, at all about alphanumerics. And even maybe a solid 5 to 6 years of studying alphanumerics alone, I didn't really even think of the word linguistic or the study of language yet applied to it. I mean, it's like phenomenally. I mean, it gets really into it. I mean, after 5 years of alphanumerics alone, I mean, I actually consider using linguistics in combination with using two numbers because the M is in and the N is in, 13 is 14, 14 is 13, and the 55 thing about heaven and sky thing, Pentagon Reserve reverse as compared to intelligence opposite and telepathic phase thing. It seems to be a really big deal about a method of banking and the 16 digit of a debit card as a checking account, or the rural route being the issue of word switching and routing involving the principles of like Cisco toilet paper in Houston as compared to Cisco, and the pronunciation and spelling, the pronunciation is the same but different, but the roller coaster. I mean, it presents the issue of like networking of Cisco, yet GIT, Geospatial Information Technology, yet the emblem Cisco uses of communications of the telephone, likewise in addition, like networking of stacks, more so on the hardware side of like switching and routing of hubbing, even the history of a mailbox, what a rural route is, to, I mean, the line, checking an endorsement, or some idea of like using a fixture in real estate, and the business hours of ATM, defining whether or not it was just being in a bank, some idea of placement at a different location of an ATM representative of a governmental computer mainframe as a storage area network, or some, defector seeking amnesty that's considered maybe not knowing that being a breach of, copyright would only be maybe the thought of like not knowing that the U.S. dollar has been geographically attached, and that the name of the entity of the checking account has been some idea of not limited to maybe what the IRA is of a non-taxable income as prepaid tax at the same time, an electronic benefit transfer of an EBT and E equal MC squared and the pi r squared at the same time of SNAP food benefits and Diners Club, and the Lone Star card and the Star is Born thing about the alphanumerics of blue being 40 and the 1040 color coded the President of the United States Air Force One thing about the color of the 1040 EZ on the same colors on Air Force One, and even they're going through a StarGate program, the Midnight Blue being on the Air Force One. I mean, it's only the duration it seemed to be that I've ever only seen involving like when I was going through it, and didn't even call it a Stargate program. I mean, it's like after a 10-year circuit actually taking a 15-year period, really 16. I'm assuming now everything that's involved, I mean, seem to be, I mean, so alphanumerically, and the way it really is of a 16-digit card, distinguishing factors of the P being visible pronounced and P being visible and being silent, and the difference between a 15-digit card of American Express and the Bluebird being nothing about the bus, okay, and even in like audio production, the bus, like assigning and designating, and busing on a mixing board, designating placement, a combine of different channels identified as busing in some terminology, yet in others almost like the front lines of the beachfront of the carbon footprint, identifying graffiti and confetti, and the footprint of a carbon footprint, identifying where it seems the difference between switching around is only like busing, and I'm trying to think of the other word, like with the sound, a mixing board and sound engineering and audio production. There's busing and the master of grouping, and I'm trying to think of the word. But anyway, it seemed to be like the deal about the carbon footprint. I mean, that way. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's already going on. God, 54 minutes. I'm talking way more than I thought about, but I wanted to include that because some of the videos that are showing now, it's kind of like, actually remembering being there, some like, I mean, even remembering anything about it. I mean, it's unreal. And really, like a lot of videos that are showing, like right now on YouTube. It's almost kind of hard to believe, but anyway, it seemed to be the thing about, almost like the Netgear, the humor about like Richard Gere in the planetarium, and like Jimmy Carter. The frequent flyer peanuts there in the planetarium, the Richard Gere thing, raising a bar. Yeah. The thing about the planetarium, perfect 1010 vision using stars, and my idea of a coupon. I mean, for real, for laser corrective eye surgery out in the west side of Houston. I mean, really, I mean, seriously, the syllable itself, like coupon being like God's angel. I mean, for real. Basically for corrective eye surgery. That you see me on my YouTube channel, WEA, pretty, PRDY, YouTube.com. And the thing of it is, it seems to present the issue like an invisible laser, almost like proper English grammatical composition that way of the principle of the R in the county and country as compared to the P being visible and pronounced and the P being visible and silent, and integrated that way like a laser. And ultimately, the thing about, laser corrective eye surgery and realizing something about when I was at the age of 15 and some idea of like knowing or not knowing, it's like, it's almost like the thing about the word hidden associated with escrow at the same time. I'd like an earnest thing about the alphabetics of 78 or a zip code, and the thing about certain factors that ultimately, originate. There seem to be, the difference between the International Space Station, International Superstar, and supplemental security. And being on supplemental security, it presents all that information. What it means as far as like walking on rice paper beyond a religious factor. Some idea of the being on par on a golf course of like some idea of the Holy Land and walking on rice paper and how to warm a horseshoes to the ice capades thing, and it ultimately gets to some ice age factors beyond even the thing about the frozen Neanderthal, Paleolithic, Anglo-Saxon. I mean, it's like the Anglo-Saxon is Sarbanes and Oxley financial instruments of SOX compliance, and the SOX and the SAX and the SAX-on, and Newbags, Iowa is the thing that I'm referring to, the Iowa caucus, and the PPI and the PPO, and the HMO being the U, the 21, the 8 and 13 of HM, and the HMO being UO and the Euro. Thing about the Euro dollar as compared to the misappropriation allocation in Mississippi and the PPI that way. And the ratio of ACPP colon being, the idea of the colon and logic circuitry. I mean, campsine, some idea of like, fine arts and humanities thing about, the abstract satire and a more presentable color arrangement of like maybe the pastel and what the pastel is, that way of canvassing a schematic, thing about, assets, on the commodity, of a fixture in real estate as compared to a fixture of a sand still in the high-low silver thing about those governmental community bank thing called the Whopper, and the blue and purple bird of Israel being the blue and purple, being the Whoopa bird. There's the thing about the Israeli bird being blue and purple, being the alphanumerics blue 40 and purple 88 being 28. And the thing about, Zion is about the 1,000 years of peace applied to that, and like FM 1128, and what 1128 as compared to 1,024 gigabytes of a terabyte, and, difference between 1128 and 1 terabyte being 1,024, being an alphabetics of 104 of like annuity, taxation, and electronic. And similarly, the thing about a patent, a copyright, and a trademark at the same time, litigation de facto and res habeas corpus, and Mercedes, and the thing about Banta's Love 30. I mean, for real, and the thing about, Mercedes, and, it's a Smart for 2 car, and ultimately, the Cyan IQ and the Saturn Sky and Love Connection, the Chuck Woolery 2 and 2 thing, ultimately get into a 2015 summit meeting, the Lexus LFSA. I mean, Smart for 2. Mercedes-Benz presenting the Smart car, Smart being 71 like Pearland, or a secret, and the thing about a secret de facto, the thing about Smart for 2 is, in my mind, like the Saturn Sky being about the rainbow, and the Cyan IQ about the highest possible score, and the IQ test being 200, I like Lord Jesus Christ and the plenipotentiary, and a bicentennial quarter, and a 200-year celebration of America, and all that stuff. Even Abraham Lincoln, the freedom, and the principle of like Abraham Lincoln night vision that way, of the kernel being the kennel, and Lincoln being the kennel, and the thing about, R squared and the kernel, and, E equal MC squared, I mean, and all in that way, and the hypothetical metaphor between, Lincoln being pronounced like kennel, and the deal about, Aryan sky and Leviathan, and telekinetic roll of the pen, and the pelican as compared to a telekinetic thing about the roll of the pen, of like described and defined as mental power, mental telepathy, involving a telekinetic roll of the pen, and somewhere between, a Corvette and a veterinarian, an Aryan sky angel veterinarian, like a vet, a military thing about retirement. Yet at the same time, um, memory minus Defacto, like the thing about going through a StarGate program, and not even considering the StarGate program until virtually years after, probably how really it was like in any case it's already going on, like it's more than an hour right now. I'm going to go ahead and maybe kind of like stop right there. I'm talking way more than I want to. Not really. I'm really not talking more than I want to. It's just that really I need to get some sleep, and I think I'm going to leave it at that right there, okay? But anyway, I want to say something real quick about the videos, and it's showing like the sunscape and the barrack, the bar, raising a bar, and the accent, the barrack on the videos are like the Dark Knight, and the AI Vision 6, and not limited to, and all that gold and similarities like the Kremlin inside the Soviet. How true it is, I mean, I actually haven't been there and actually know if it's just the idea of networking, television programming. So I'm not saying that I just like absolutely it's anything other than geographic attachment based upon distribution of information that way, or even publication or like World International News of whether or not if the degree plan is only a dimensional clause of Washington D.C. as a direct circuit or dimensional clause. I mean, a degree level, or what that is, as a dimensional clause. So in any case, so that much about it is. But what's showing there in the videos, they're just standing there staring and looking at each other. I mean, that is predominantly, my thought when I knew for the first time was when I was looking at the screensavers of Europe's most wealthiest museum, and, people being in it. When I was there, I mean, I didn't remember hardly anything about it other than the screensaver and the view. And it seemed to be the Barbara Walters Hugh Downs thing about, Hughes unit and Howard Hughes and that nativity point of origin of a Native American Indian, and the thing about behavior, getting like the idea of a circuit involving, the thought of a reservation being like like an invitation to the invitations are on par, In any case, the Stargate program ultimately, involving Abraham Lincoln night vision and shadow government, and the thing about Diners Club presenting the font size of a grayscale. I think it was only 5 of the 10, like the 10 Commandments being on a plateau. Moses on a plateau getting the 10 Commandments etched by lightning, and the thing about the font size of like the Diners Club presenting only 5 variations of the grayscale. I think there's only 10. It's almost like the 10 Commandments, two tablets of like Charlton Heston and Moses being 71 in Pearland on a plateau, and the Mount Olives thing about the one word transfiguration, Alphabet 192, and the home theater between the MKZ and the MKHC, a powered amplification, the American Amplified, identifying some idea of waveform and frequency of amplification of the 24, 48, 72, and 96 of customizing waveform in post production as compared to live production of like the vertical and the vertical transparent parameters of an orbital 3-dimensional digital signal processor. It seemed to be the deal about the perpendicular spiral and the 90-degree. In my mind somewhere it would be like the superimposium of special effects of the 90-degree between frequency and attenuation and identifying processing speed in waveform between the 24, the 48, 72, and 96 that way. And Great Expectation being the high society, the 96 thing about, the Concorde. I mean, like, it's like 24, okay? Like the acronym HOA, GMAC, and IEEE. The 48 being like live and, hey, 6, all right, yeah. The thing about 48, and there's more to it, but it's just a simple, quick 2 about it, yeah. And the thing about 72 being like First City National Bank, or, Kobe ID 19, or the money thing, and school thing, the 72 thing, and the world thing, right? And the color of money that way. And the 96 being like, Great Expectations, and the deal about Make America Great Again in the colors of the United States of America flag being red, white, blue, and the Make America Great Again, like the British flag having the same colors, different by design, and all that, combination. Ultimately, a Hill HX-50 helicopter thing in my mind. Presenting the idea of something vertical in the way of like a Japanese alphabet, presenting the different design E, the absolute values going through calculus and the quantum, and the different design E, and having a structure of quantum that calculus does not, and it seemed to be the two Japanese letters that way, of 22 alphabetical letters, and some idea of like FBI psychology minus RCA, or the FDIC, the 22 thing about it, and a whole lot of stuff. Okay, it's already going on like an hour and 5 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and stop right there. But yeah, I won't say that much because the videos that I'm referring to right now are of the bunch of golden spaceships, and actually, a location of like several of like even Yanni in the pyramid in a StarGate program, remembering something about actually being taken there, even being able to, or something about the mind's eye, or the incoherent thing about it. Yeah, so anyway, I thought I'd include that real quick. But it's like in the videos of like the Dark Knight, and the thing about all the videos with like that type of like gold, they're just like staring at each other. I mean, everyone gets the point about, but it's like that museum. When I first knew of like a Microsoft like PowerPoint of the screensavers in Europe's wealthiest museum, being the thing about just staring at it like a freeze frame. And the frozen Neanderthal Paleolithic Anglo-Saxon of Sarbanes and Oxley financial innocence of SOX compliance is almost like the Saxon and the socks on and the SOX compliance. I mean, some humor. I mean, but hey, anyway, I'm gonna stop right there because the thing about it is that Europe's most wealthiest museum is almost just like people, and my thought was that it's like a funeral home, and I was only in a certain section, and remembering anything about it is phenomenally to my own surprise. I mean, it's not that I'm surprised. It's just that when I realized for the first time, I don't even like using the word amnesia, but the intense thing about a Stargate program going through it, remembering, like a 30-year period seemed to be like obviously an eternal treasure in the military. The Stargate program already knows that experience, and I'm already, with the assumption that that period of like when like the memories rejuvenate, like a 25, 30-year period, if not 35, continually. It's starting to be more and more so very much about YouTube, and not limited to in world news and national news, the thing about it. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, there it is. Okay, taking a break. There it is. Yeah.